Welcome to a new edition of Clavertis Miller's Fine Arts Gallery here in the Poconos. Today I have a special guest with me who's a friend, who's a singer, a writer, a producer. He's a founding member of a group from the 60s and 70s called the Invitations. And they have, if you're familiar with that time period, or if you were back in that time period, they had a great hit called, and correct me if I'm wrong, is
They say
the lady is crazy.
Yeah, they say the girls.
They say the girl is crazy. Okay, right. great.
Right.
But they are residents here in the Poconos. And just to get into it a little bit with you, where did you guys come from before moving to the Poconos? Where were you living?
Okay, originally all of the members that when I joined the group was called the Tip Toppers, and that was like in the early 60s, like 1963, around that time. And by 1964, we had members from North Carolina. Mm-hmm. One was actually born in Brooklyn, right? Myself, I was from Richmond, Virginia, and the other young man was from Baltimore, Billy Morris. So as time went on, that particular group of Invitations, Billy Morris, Bobby Rivers singing bass, Billy Morris singing baritone and second, I'm singing first and second, and we also had a young man before them by the name of Roy Jolly, mm-hmm. who was from Augusta. I think he was from actually the Atlanta area of Georgia. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And he was the lead singer on all of our stuff that we did, say around 64.
Right.
7 or 8 different songs, maybe a bit more for Donna Boyce Records.
Mm-hmm. So you guys, so it started in Brooklyn then?
Yeah, it actually started in Brooklyn because, as I mentioned, they were called the Tip Toppers, and mm-hmm. they actually came. They just did a stint in Switzerland, and they came home.
Right.
And then they needed another singer, and they approached me.
So when you guys actually started out, was it talent shows or shows themselves that when you first got on stage?
No, not really. Back in the 60s, the heyday of the 60s, there were clubs. Nightclubs just about on every corner in Brooklyn, this certain street called Fulton Street. Mm-hmm. And if you had a group and you would go in and you would perform, right, just go in and perform a number, mm-hmm. like say for instance on a Thursday night or something like that. Right. If you were very, very good, the next week that club or that bar would hire you for the whole weekend.
Okay.
So you would do Friday, Saturday, sometime a matinee on Sunday. So that's basically how my group started. I originally came from Richmond, Virginia, and straight out of the military, I spent 2 weeks at home, and I came to New York, and that was in 1962.
Right.
So having never been in an atmosphere like that, even though I was in a singing group in the military. We had a contract with United Artists. So I came as a singer to fulfill that contract. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. The other 4 fellows that was in the group at that time, named the Champlains, they were getting out sporadically after I did. So I had a whole year out by myself. Mm-hmm. I danced with a dance team for about a good 6 or 7 months called the Magnificent Three.
So what was there were some groups also in the 70s that you guys sort of were not affiliated with, but you were around who were in that Motown area. Was there any of those guys that you?
We did quite a few shows. One of the shows was called Ebony Affair, and that show was actually taped in Alexandria, Virginia, but it was a syndicated show. Mm-hmm. So it came on just like Soul Train and some of the other shows like the one that Jerry B did out of New York.
Right.
So we were guests on both of those shows a lot.
Right.
You know, though so happens that Ebony Affair, the TV show, actually came out of D.C. and there was a few young men. They actually bought a club which we had performed at in Washington, D.C., and that was called Mark IV. So we do the TV show, perform at the club, do the TV show, perform at the club, and a couple of theater gigs. We actually opened in 1964. We opened for the Temptations at the Howard Theater.
Right.
And that was the original group. David was in the group, but so was Paul at that time.
Right.
Paul.
Well, see, what I didn't tell the audience also is that this young man is a super 81-year-old performer who still performs from time to time.
That on my good days.
On his on his good days.
I'll do an electric slide for you or something.
Well, tell us a little bit about your England connection.
Okay, the England connection was horrific. In the beginning, it was horrific because we had a manager, and his initials were VM. I'll just say that.
Okay.
And this young man also was managing a group called the Toys, right? So the Toys was like our sister group, and we were the Invitations. However, we were sent to England to perform for like 3.5 to 4 months. And when we got to England, we found out that we were performing as some kind of drifters, American drifters or something like that. Our manager at that time, VM, had told us, learn a lot of drifter songs because they love drifter songs. Now, we had about maybe 3 or 4 songs with Donna voice at that time. Hallelujah, What's Wrong With Me, Baby, Written on the Wall. You can Google all of those songs, great songs too. And at any rate, the writers and arrangers were Denny Randall and Sandy Linzer, right? So they had the big hit with the Toys called Lover's Concerto. To make a long story short, we get to England and we see that we're performing at this one club. The first night we went, the American Drifters that featured the Invitations. So we kind of like didn't think about it too much. And we did the show, we did the drifter song that they had prepared us to do. But then we found out our manager left the next day, and we had to go to the office to pick up our passports because he left our passports at the agent's office.
Right.
So we go there, and we find out, amongst other things, that they had actually booked us as some kind of drifters.
So even though it started out, you say, it's a little horrific in the beginning,
right?
As time went on, things sort of changed up a little bit.
It took us about maybe, I would say, three years, and all told, to like really just clean the board and clear it. And we had to hire a barrister every time we went back. And we would go back. We had the young man who was actually our roadie became our manager, right? Okay. So we had our stuff legally set up. And one of the reasons that we did that is because the agency that we was working for at that particular time also had Charlie and Inez Fox, which Charlie and Inez Fox were Brother Sisters Act. They had Mockingbird, right? The word is that they went on to perform one night and their taxes wasn't paid, so they incarcerated them.
Oh.
You know, and then they left the country, and I think they never went back to work there.
That's not a good thing. You have to pay those taxes.
That's right. Yeah. So by us hiring a barrister and moving on from that agency and us trying to book our own gigs down the line, having our manager, Leo DeClerc, book all our gigs, we kind of got around everything. So we would go back and forth for quite a few years. In 1973, we had come home. And we were actually, every time we came home, we had at least 3 to 4 special clubs that we worked in.
Right. Okay.
Every time we came home.